It always changes. It always reverses. There's always a correction. And we're having 3 corrections right now. We don't even have enough history in the tech industry to predict what the tech industry can do. The people running the tech industry are almost too young to know what the tech industry can do. Nobody knows. I mean, the idea that we buy houses to buy and then fix up and sell like a business is why the housing market has so many problems. A lot of people do spec buying.
So yeah, Robin, what's your take on what's happening with the economy right now? Like what's happening with the job market, what's happening with the stock market, what's happening in general? Because there seems to be competing sentiments. There seems to be people who think there's a recession right around the corner, people who think we're in a recession, but it's masked, and then people who think, no, we're doing just fine and things are better than ever. So yeah, let's kick it off with that.
Well, that is absolutely a huge task to corral all my thoughts on that kind of thing. Yeah, it's a big deal. First, I want to address the economy in general. The economy, we always think the economy and the stock market go together. And that's not true. The stock market is an entity in of itself, and it's run by a very elite group of people. The stock market, if you're in it and you're an employee, you're in it maybe because you have a 401k and someone's investing it for you, or you picked a program. But in general, the stock market is an indicator of money moving in and out of people's pockets. It's not a tie to the economy. The stock market in itself is like a Ponzi scheme, and people don't want to hear that, but it really is new money in, money out, people hedging their bets, people finding insider trading, finding out that a company's failing or there's a new one on the horizon that they want to buy stock in. People get tips. There's not really anything honorable about the stock market. And I know that's going to cause some controversy. So number one, do not look at the economy based on what the stock market is doing. That's actually a life of its own and separate. I'll liken it to, you have a very wealthy uncle and his money goes up and down, and he has properties that are selling and then properties that are diving, and then he's very rich and then he loses a portion of his portfolio because Elon Musk bought Twitter. That uncle over there has a life of his own, and your family just keeps plodding along doing the same thing, and you're fine, but your uncle's going up and down. That's the stock market. So people have to stop going, oh, the stock market did this, and now the economy is bad. No, the economy can still be stable with the stock market going up and down. I have been through it with the stock market, and unless you have a real stomach for big losses and then, hang on for dear life, the stock market is for those who are much braver and have much more stability in their portfolios and their various investments in life. If you're a person who just relies on the stock market without any other things, you could see that the stock market runs your life, but that it's just not true. The stock market is not the economy. The economy can affect the stock market, but the average person isn't even in the stock market. So, now, do you want the side effects of the stock market doing badly? Is, corporations lose money. That means they might cut back on jobs. But in general, the stock market is a whole different life form than the regular economy. Secondly, in employment, Joe, employment is historically been on the employer's side. It is one of those things. When my mom worked, which was 90 years ago, 80 years ago, we weren't even allowed to contact her during her time at the place of employment she had. She worked for a bank, and she couldn't come to any play we were in. If we were sick, she couldn't stay home. She actually did not have a vacation plan. nor did she have any sick leave. So when we were kids, we had to walk 2 miles home, not through the snow, but 2 miles home. And we were allowed, after she had worked there 2 years, for us to call a number, and whoever picked up the phone, we would say, "Please tell our mom that we're home safely." That was the extent of talking to someone at their job. Then I started working, and it had changed. I had a little bit more freedom. I did have 5 days of vacation a year. This is back in 1970, 69, 70, and 71. But there
Mm-hmm.
weren't a lot of employee rights, Joe. The employer ran the show. If the employer said you work late, you worked late. If the employer said you don't get the day off, you didn't. If you were home with your child because they were sick, you got docked. Your pay got docked unless they took some kindness towards you. In general, it was the employer ran the show. And then later, employers started giving you health benefits, and you started having a savings plan or a 401k. These kind of things came into play, and you started to have an employee manual and sick days and earned vacation days. And it came around to, okay, corporations who were employing a lot of people were being kinder. Small businesses, on the other hand, were a little bit more kind to their employees, but had less money to give them time off. So if you worked for a small company, oftentimes you were running it with the employer, and there wasn't a lot you could say, but if you needed time off, the employer would do it. But in corporations, the rules got very strict. And then come to the 80s, massive amount of people were laid off in the aerospace industry.
Mm-hmm.
Massive amount of job
And you
losses.
don't think we're in a similar spot right now at all, right?
Look, we are in the spot we're in because we inflated the idea of tech. We pushed too many people into tech. We had too many kids coming out of college in the tech industry. We got plump in tech, and now it's a correction in tech. And does that seem fair? Not really. Does it seem fair that all of a sudden people are getting laid off? No, it's rotten, because the tech industry had the best schedules. Those people worked their butts off, but they had more time off, and they had more freedom to work from home, and they got a lot of perks working in tech. The people that really struggled were the people that were working in warehouses trying to deliver things during COVID. Let's face it, the pandemic changed everything. The pandemic switched from the people making a lot of money being important to the people that had boots on the ground that were always important, but we sort of dissed. And those people got worked to the bone, and they're the ones quitting. If you notice, the high paid people are being laid off, but the people that were paid $15 to $20 an hour that worked themselves to a bone during the pandemic, they flat out quit and said, "I'm not going back to those professions. I'm not going back." I know 2 nurses who quit. I know 3 teachers who quit and said, "You know what? If that's the way they're going to treat us, I don't want to be in that industry." So not only are we seeing a shift in corporations laying people off because they were fat and sassy when they
Mm-hmm.
hired too many people, which is a correction that happens. That correction happens every 10 to 13 years, where we just bulk up on people and then they streamline and overwork the people. This time around, we found people leaving the workforce on purpose. And that has left a big gap in the daily lives of people, like going to the grocery store, um, getting your electricity done, electrical work done,
Mm-hmm.
getting your lawn mowed, having enough baristas at the coffee shop, having enough servers, having enough people working fast food and working in hotels. Those were the people that were abused during the pandemic. So for anybody to base the next year on the 3 years we've just lived, if they can really predict what will happen, they're genius, and everybody should be listening to them. The housing market is taking another change, and why? I'm gonna explain. Do I have time to explain, Joe, what
Yeah,
happened?
yeah, of course. I'm fascinated by everything, and a lot of the stuff
Okay,
you're saying are things that I was going to ask anyway. So
right.
it's
Okay,
great.
so the housing market. Here's what happened. When I bought a house a long time ago, the interest rate was 6%.
Hmm.
When I bought a house in the 80s, in 1986, the interest rate was 16.25. 1986. So everybody who wants to blame
Jeez.
someone, go to 1986. That is when my interest rate was 16.2%. I got to refinance 2 years later, 3 years later at 11%. By the time I sold the house, my interest rate was 6.5. So in the
Mm.
80s, when they talk about interest rate and what was going on at the time, and the chair of the federal, what is that guy?
Federal
Um,
Reserve.
yeah, the Federal Reserve guy, 16.25%. So anybody who's saying, "Oh, it's at 7%," you should have tried to buy a house back then, and housing prices were rising in the 80s and the interest rate was high. Now what we have like plummeting housing prices because the interest rate is rising. Okay, I like that better, and I'll tell you why. When
Hmm.
we go into a market where people are bidding on houses and paying, two, 300, 400,000 more than the house is worth,
Hmm.
and we can have a whole discussion on how you determine what a house is worth, and it's really location, 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 as they always say. But when interest rates go up, people cannot negotiate payments. And you see starkly what a payment would be if your interest rate is 7.5% and you're paying principal too. Back when you could get a 2.25 interest only loan, you were buying above your grade of house. You were probably saying, "Oh, well, if the payment's only going to be X, we can pay 2.5 million for a house, or we can pay 850 instead of 6, which was our budget." So
Hmm.
interest rates fooled people into thinking they could afford more house than they could. Um, I don't know how every state's property tax works, but property tax is usually based on the selling price of your home, the final selling price of your home, and they have a percentage they apply to that gross number. So you have to look at a lot more things. What is property tax? What is insurance? What is the upkeep? Is this house perfect? And then you have to look at the fine print of your mortgage. And so people didn't do that. So we have the corporations laying off people because they were top heavy in people. We have the wonderful workers who keep the country running with the wages of $12 to about $22. We have them quitting. We have the interest rate rising and the housing market lowering. So we have three things going on all at one time, where we
Hmm.
usually don't have all three things happening at the same time. Um, and that's why everybody's saying, "Oh, look out, look out, look out, look out." Can I predict what will happen with all three of them? No. I think the probably biggest one of all of them is the not choice to quit your job and get laid off from a corporation when you've probably taken your whole lifestyle and upped it a few notches because you go, "Oh, I'm making 225,000 a year and I have a 401k and I have 3 weeks of vacation and I have health benefits in my family. We can buy this house." So if you're that person who rose your level of living up to what your salary was and didn't plan if you lost that job, you're really in a world of hurt. And
Yeah.
your house is probably losing value. Your mortgage rate, if it's an adjustable, is rising, and you've lost your job and you've lost some of your benefits. And when you try and get those benefits in the open market, it's a lot tougher than if your employer provided them. I also want to say that there is a real problem, and I mean this, where people don't go in broadly. They go in
Mm-hmm.
with tunnel vision when they get a good position and they're spending and they're buying and they're saying, oh, yeah, this will last forever. I'm going to give you guys the best information I can get because I've been around a long time. I've lived many decades. It always changes. It always reverses. There's always a correction. And we're having 3 corrections right now. Plus, we're trying to come out of the pandemic. I just read this morning that it's an endemic, which means that it has gone, they've decided through hospital stays and people who are reporting they have COVID, it's gone down quite a bit. So they're calling it an endemic now. So it's not a pandemic. But if you take that, we got really chunky with our corporate world, and we got really low with our interest rate. We
Mm-hmm.
got really inflated by the housing market, and then we got a pandemic, and then people have to make the correction, and the correction is always made in
Mm-hmm.
on the corporate level by people that are really disconnected from the workforce. So you're
Yes, I've
just
seen
a
that.
number, an employee number, or you're not even a name to them. And so they just say to the people who actually have to work with middle management, you need to lay off 2,000 people and it needs to happen by this date. And, oh, sad to, what, oh, bad, too sad. They don't care. And so because they're not connected to the people in their lives, and people who go to work think that the boss cares. I want to tell you, large corporations, absolutely, absolutely, no one is connected to the employees at large. They do not really connect. You're a number, and either you produce income for them or you're starting to change their bottom line. So if you're looking for sympathy from the higher ups at the corporation you've been laid off from, you won't get it. You might get sympathy from your peer group or the manager right above you or the HR department, but you won't get it from the higher ups. They do not look at you as clearly as you and your peer group look at you. They don't have that same reaction. They go
Mm-hmm.
into a room, they get a report, it says that they're losing money, they are paying X amount for marketing and they have got product services, and they say, where are we going to cut? And the first thing they cut is labor. So when you're in the labor force, you have to do more planning than just, oh, I got a great job, I'll be there forever. No, you won't. I'll,
No, I
I'll
know.
tell you, I'll tell you, Joe, it's a real eye opener. I had a situation in my life where someone had worked in aerospace for 35 years. And
Mm-hmm.
during the course of his 35 years, people had gotten retirement parties, gold watches, stock options, everything. This was in the heyday of the aerospace industry. When
Mm-hmm.
this person was about to retire, before they were able to retire, they came in on a Monday morning. There was a literal pink slip on their desk and a tape. This is a while ago, a videotape of how to get back into the workforce when you've been laid off. And that was after 35 years. And there was no party, there was no gold watch, there was no goodbye luncheon. It was just over. And
That's
that's
cold.
how, yeah, but that's how much the workforce has changed, and how much control corporate leaders have over the people that work for them. That does not matter. 35 years, loyal as can be, pink slip, video, gone.
Yeah, that's
No,
crazy. And Robin, I just want to go back a little bit. You said that there are 3 corrections right now. You might have already said it, but what are those 3 corrections happening right now?
the 3 corrections are, well, there might be 4, Joe. The corrections are that corporations are going to streamline, and they had gotten top heavy and pretty employee rich,
Yeah.
and they are now thinning the herd. The second thing is the stock market grows and grows, and it
Mm-hmm.
has to make a correction or people won't enter the stock market. So the stock market is, like I said, It is a sanctioned Ponzi scheme where people have to get in at some point, so it has to ebb and flow. The next correction is that the workforce that was keeping us alive during the pandemic has
Mm,
quit and said, I don't want to do that
mm.
anymore. I'm not interested. And then the fourth is the interest rates going up while the
Mm.
housing market it's not crashing, it's correcting too. So
And
there are
how are
four.
those people surviving? The people who don't have those high paying jobs? Because obviously I can see how those people are surviving, right? Hopefully they have a lot of savings and other opportunities, I'm sure. But like the people who are quitting those jobs that they just don't want to work anymore, like how are they
Well,
surviving?
yeah, well, some of them have held out and gotten paid more. There is a new trend or idea that if you want to keep a healthy workforce, you're going to have to offer them things. And
Mm,
in general, the people that were being paid $12 to $22 were not being offered benefits, were being only used part time, were not being looked at as a solid, stable, full time employee. And so they said, pretty much hell with this. We don't want to do that. We do not want to be abused like this. So as they exited the workforce, they left a big hole. And that is what, believe it or not, corporations are trying to shore up. Like corporations like CVS's and
mhm.
Walgreens and grocery stores and hospitals without nurses. They're the ones in jeopardy. They're the ones that they need specific kinds of workers to keep their companies going. And if people are not going to work in fast food and are not going to be checkers and are not going to be LVNs and don't want to take crap from people screaming at them all the time, that's the group of people I'm the most concerned with. The ones that are trying to get, can't even afford an apartment. Um, those are the
Yeah,
ones
yeah.
I worry about. Now, the
I mean, how
jobs
do
are
they
still
survive?
there. The
Yeah.
jobs are still there, but they took a stand and said, I don't want to go back to that job unless something changes. I don't want to go back to that job when it's still the same crappy job. I would like
Mhm.
to be paid, $5 more an hour. I would like to get some benefit. I would like to get stable hours. That's what that whole fabulous workforce that kept us alive during the pandemic is saying. Basically, you need to treat us better. You don't get to stomp all over us and act like you're better. And I am on their side 100%. You don't get to do that. You don't get to do that. Think about this. We have so abused servers in restaurants when we moved things outside, and we were yelling at servers, and servers said, I don't want to go to work. I don't want to do that. I just don't want to. And
Yeah.
so there was a moment in time when they could get unemployment, and we had a moratorium on rents, and we had stopped student loans. So you see where I'm going with this, Joe? All
Yeah,
those
yeah.
things are coming back. And so all those
Exactly. So all
people are
those
going to
people
come back
who
to work. They're going
yeah,
to have
so
to come back to work.
things are gonna have to return to quote unquote normal, right?
Yeah, and normal wasn't all that good. So, and normal makes us fear less. It makes us less fearful when people use the terms normal in the newspapers and online. But there's no normal after what we just went through for 3 years. It's called big adjustments. It's big adjustments. And I really get upset with people when they don't go in knowing that a big adjustment could be in 5 years again. So we should do a whole show, Joe, on when you can buy a house, when you're really ready to
Yeah.
buy a house. And I have to say that the reason that this is happening, Joe, is because no one really did deep dives into these situations. Everybody jumped on board. There's such a
Mm.
difference between digging deep, doing a deep dive into how this will all work, having a 5, 7, 10-year plan, and or just jumping on the bandwagon and you know uh making hay while the sun shines. And there's this, oh my gosh, I'm just going to jump in and I'm going to make all this money, I'm going to do this, I'll spend it, but I'll make way more. Nobody prepares for the corrections. Everybody believes it's going to go on forever, and I have to tell you that nothing goes on forever. And Facebook could not sustain what they were doing. Twitter could not sustain what it was doing without a big correction. These people
Exactly.
were making money on you spending your money on their platforms, and yet it didn't have any fail safes for any corrections, and so all of a sudden we're all riding high, and then we're all crashing and burning. Nobody goes another layer deep. The workforce had become very shallow in that I'm going to go in there and I'm make as much money as I can. And then, oh, there'll be someone else who wants me. I've looked at resumes over the last 10 years, and the people on the resume keep jobs for 18 months. Then a headhunter comes in and says, I can get you 10,000 more at another company. They jump to that other company, and they have a resume over the last 15 years of 8 jobs. Before, that was unheard of. If you had a resume where you took job after job after job, someone would stop and say, hey, wait a minute, this person, I'm going to train this person, I'm going to do all this, and they're not going to stay. And even the employers weren't looking at the deep dive and saying, well, look at this history. So the tech world, honestly, Joe, the tech world is in its infant stage. uh,
Exactly. Exactly.
we don't even have enough history in the tech industry to predict what the tech industry can do. The people running the tech industry are almost too young to know what the tech industry can do. Nobody knows. I mean,
Yeah,
our
we're figuring it
country,
out.
yeah, they're figuring it out. Our country is 250 years old or whatever, and we haven't even figured it out. Have we really figured it out? We're
We're
still
getting there.
finding our way. We're finding our way. So for anybody to make an absolute about a job, a house, an interest rate, or any of those things, you can't. You can't have an absolute. If you have X amount of money that you're going to make to live, and you suddenly get a good job, keep the old way for a little while. Stop competing with everybody and saying, oh, well, let's get a bigger house. Stay where you are.
Connect with
Work,
your cash.
connect with your cash. Stop making these crazy jumps without any history. We never dig deep. We always jump up. And you have sometimes you have to dig in, and you have to do your research, and you have to kind of hold back and say, okay, I just got a new job. I'm making 50,000 more a year. Let's not raise our living expenses by 50,000. Let's keep our living expenses the way they are. Let's put that 50,000 extra somewhere and see where it goes. I mean, did anybody know in December of 2019 that in April of 2020 they would be out of a job? No. Did anybody ever even think that anything was coming? There are still people who don't believe it happened. So, you know,
It was
the
surreal when it was happening,
it
wasn't it?
was surreal.
It
And
was crazy.
the human condition is to block. It says,
Mm.
nope, not happening to me. Might be happening to them over there, but I'm going to be fine. Then it happens to me, and I join the group of people who aren't fine, and I'm angry and I'm hurt and I'm confused and I haven't planned for it. We are the human race is without a plan, really. We're born, we live in chaos, and then suddenly we're dying, and we don't in between really plan. And when you speak to planning to people, they like their eyes glaze over and they put their fingers in their ears and go, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear this. No, you have to plan. And I'm saying right now, you'll say to yourself, yeah, I'm not going to buy a house because the interest rate is high.
Yeah. No, that's
Okay,
been,
makes
I
sense.
never wanted to buy one, but your
Yeah,
advice
but
has
if
been helpful in that
yeah,
regard.
but if the houses are dropping,
Hmm.
it's way smarter to buy low than
Oh
it
yeah.
is to buy high. So you have to sit down with your budget, and that word makes people go crazy as well, and say, well, if I buy this house at an interest rate of 7, but I've paid 300,000 or 400,000 less for it, in the long run, I am in at a good place where I probably won't be upside down and I can afford the interest rate. If you get in really high with a interest rate that's adjustable, and it started out at 2.5 and it's up to 6%, and you bought a house that was way over market, you're going to be upside down. And if you can't buy low and you don't have millions of dollars in capital reserve, don't buy. And if
Oh, I
you're in a
know.
house that's paid off and you need some money, do a little refinance on your house or take out a line of credit that's secured against your house, but don't
Mhm.
sell your house. If your
Yeah.
house is paid for or has a very low mortgage, keep it. Even if you have, you want more bedrooms and you want more bathrooms and you want to live in a better neighborhood. I so understand that. And want to be in a great school district, but if you can't sustain it, don't do it. I'll tell you why people do it. It's the old generations, and shame on us.
Mhm.
The American dream was to own a house. Okay.
Mhm.
The American dream was to own a house. And over the course of the last 60 years, we have made people that rent feel badly and made people who rent feel like they are not as successful as people that have bought a house. Let's be clear, unless you buy a house for cash, the bank owns your home and you are giving the bank interest.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
exactly.
if you're paying rent, you're giving a landlord rent and that's helping him pay his property tax and things on that. But it's an individual, maybe you're renting from a corporation. But when you own a home and you put 20% down on the price of the house, the rest of the house is owned by the bank. And for the first 10 years of your mortgage, unless you're able to make real big balloon payments without penalty, the bank is getting your income in interest. So stop thinking that you are in this great, wonderful place. The best way to own a home is if you can go in with 50% or more down, buy low, get an average interest rate, and keep that house for a long time to be able to go through all the ups and downs of the housing market. If you buy low in the place that you can live comfortably and you want to live there, the idea that we buy houses to buy and then fix up and sell like a business is why the housing market has so many problems. A lot of people do spec buying, especially in states like California, Washington, New York, Massachusetts, Florida, in some parts of Texas, and where the housing market goes up and down so volatilely, and that people go in when the market goes low and they buy, and then they wait for the market go up and they sell it. They're part of a Ponzi scheme in essence, a legitimate one. Don't get me wrong. It's not illegal, but it mimics like what the stock market does. The housing market is
Mhm.
run by a lot of people who have a lot of money and can fluctuate the market rate. That's what happens. So you want to buy low, you want to keep enough, you want to have enough capital to be able to fix it up. You don't want the bank to own more than you do. Those are the way you go into a house. And nobody in the other generations told anybody that. And I used to go, "Oh my goodness, what is going on?" People are, because the interest rate is low, um, people are buying houses without even being checked if they have the income. They didn't read the fine print, Joe. There were loans being written where in 3 years, principal got added and the interest rate went up by 2%. So
Mhm.
imagine you buy a house at 3% and the payment's 1,400. And so you shopped the payment instead of shopping what you could afford. So you go into this mortgage broker and you say, "I can afford 1,400." So they create this loan for you. You buy a house, you sign the paperwork. You don't read that in 3 years, the interest rate goes from 3% to 5%, and they're adding in $1,200 a month for principal. And all of a sudden, you've got a $3,200 mortgage payment and your house hasn't increased. And the whole thing was, Joe, that all these mortgage brokers said, oh, no problem. Your house will appreciate. And in 3 years, we'll just refinance your house. You can pull it out. You can get a good interest rate. And this little clause that says your interest rate's going to 5 and your principal of 1,200 is added, that'll be just taken care of. And in the meantime, it was a negative mortgage amortization. And anything they gave you a $1,400 payment when it should have been $2,000, all of that's being added on to the end of your mortgage. Nobody knew. Nobody paid attention. So all of a sudden, the market crashed, the housing market, the Bernie Madoff mess of 2008 crashed. All of these things started crashing and people were into their houses. They had paid $245,000 and their house wasn't even worth $140,000. They had their mortgage upside down and they either abandoned their property or lived in it for free until the bank took it over. We did that to ourselves. We got greedy. The mortgage brokers were so excited to get all these commissions that they threw you in the barrel. People go into stuff without doing their homework. And I'm a person that believes you have to do your homework. Can you do this? If you can't, don't. I don't care if you're getting pressure from your parents and saying, what are you renting for? Why are you still renting? You're throwing away money. No, you're living your life.
Be quiet, mom and dad. I love you, but stop talking.
Yeah. And stop making me feel bad about my life choices, but make better life choices. You can't, money decisions influence the rest of your world. So if you make poor money decisions, you're not happy. You can't do things for your kids. You can't, a lot of those things are gone because you are making poor money decisions. No, you can't make poor money decisions. You've got to stop. And, the stock market, changing jobs all the time, buying a house that's inflated, not looking at your credit card interest, all of those things. So what's going to happen with unemployment? It's going to rise up. We're going to have more unemployment. We're going to have people hurting, and we're going to have corporations holding the line tight until they can figure it out. And we're going to have a lot of people going into business for themselves. And Joe,
ultimately, that's going to be a net positive once we're out of this, right? Because it's going to give more competition. It's going to bring new ideas. People are going to become more self-sufficient, right?
Right.
That's kind of what happened in 2008, 2009, right? Like a lot of people went into business for themselves. I did that at the beginning. I wasn't making much, but I had freedom. I had clients. And then little by little, the economy started to recover, and all of a sudden there was like a ton of opportunities. And that's a good segue into the next kind of like wrapping things up. How long do you think, and of course, if anyone had this crystal ball and knew with certainty they would be insanely rich, because then they could predict what's going to happen right in the stock market and things like that. But stock market aside, like how long do you predict this correction to keep going? And like, it seems like you don't think we've seen the bottom of it. So how long do you think it's going to take for us to see the bottom and then for that upswing to come?
Okay. So the bottom won't look like bottoms looked before. This is going to be a new type of bottom because we're coming out of the pandemic. The next 18 months are crucial. Everybody hang on tight and don't quit your job. Keep working, because the 18 months it's going to take to see how we're going to reverse this. So right now we're not in a free fall, but we're in a slow decline. So for the next 18 months, really no one should make moves. No one should quit their job. I know if you're being abused, it's terrible. I don't know what to do about that. If you're being really disrespected at your job, no one should be disrespected at their job.
What about for the people who are unemployed looking for work? What will we tell them?
If they're unemployed and they're looking for work, you have to understand that there are jobs out there that you might think are beneath you. because you were a person who did this and you made X amount of dollars. What I encourage you to do is look at small businesses and see if you can't get a job with a small business. I know that we want corporate jobs and we want security and we want benefits, but instead of being laid off without a job, go to your local communities and look for small businesses. Small businesses are extremely generous in the way that they, help people out. So try small businesses and look for odd, unique type of experiences. Look for
Mhm.
project gigs. Try and get a project gig if you have a certain talent. Get yourself out there, put an ad out there for yourself and say, I can do this. I have a lot of experience. And I'm not saying to underprice yourself, but go in with a range. Don't go in with just one number and say, if they don't pay me this, I'm not taking it. Get some negotiation going. Ask for some, if you're really starting to help them, ask for a percentage of the business. See what they do. Always have your resume say what you can bring to their table. One of the things people are looking for is a resume that shows that they have depth. What can they bring to the table that I don't already have? Because there might be 10 people that want the job you're going for, or 100 people, but you've got to add something extra. Not only can I do these jobs, but I will do that job also. I will increase this, or I will give you more time, or whatever. Make
Mhm.
sure you're adding value when you're looking for a job. That the last 5 years have been all about the employee. I want
Mhm.
benefits. I want things for me. You can't talk to me that way. You can't do this. Now we've got to meet in the middle because employers are hurting. But the employee now has to say, I will work for you and I'm going to add value, more value than I might have added 10 years ago. I actually have learned these things. I now have a new skill. And
Yeah.
for everybody out there that's listening, get a new skill, do an
Mhm.
online class, add
Mhm.
something to your resume that you learned. Simple bookkeeping, take a QuickBooks course, take an Excel course, get yourself up to speed in other areas because you might be asked to be sort of the utility player at a small business. You come in and you say, I can do 4 things instead of 2. Add value to your resume. There's so much online that's available for free or very little cost. Get something added to your resume. Add more value. If you're in this area, get some experience over here that isn't quite in this area, or go over here with some bookkeeping, and over here with filing skills or digital getting everything digitalized. Is it digitized or digitalized? I'm not sure of that.
I like
But
both.
learn other skills too. Bring a fuller plate to someone. Bring a better resume. And if you're home and not working and you've got a computer, there's no reason why you can't educate yourself in a couple of other areas and take some courses, online courses from a community college or from adult school. There are so many things available. So in this market, you've got to add more. That's the way it works.
Yeah.
What
I like
Not
it.
what did you do 10 years ago or 5 years ago, but what have you learned in the meantime that you can bring value to my company? And, small businesses are usually 50 employees and under, and most often 25 employees and under. And you can have an impact and you can have a team and you'll like it. I just want to say that learning is the key. The next 18 months are not going to be a wild ride, but they're going to be uncomfortable. Embrace the discomfort and, on a really important level, connect back with your money and see what it's doing. Because when we have these corrections, it's always our pocket, our cash, our checkbook, our bank accounts that suffer, and we're not prepared for that. And we just want to hang on and wait till it goes away, but we don't do the work in between. In this next 18 months, do the work.
Yeah, do the
Do the
work,
work.
improve yourself, and
Learn things, go
yeah,
online, take classes, increase your resume, add more
exactly.
value.
Because there's a lot of things you do have control over. So focus on that. Don't focus
Yes.
on the things you don't have control over.
Right. Right.